stop by, say hello, give you a little update on what's happening in the campaign, and take any questions that you have. My name is Mike Fitzpatrick. I'm your candidate for United States Congress. I've had the privilege of representing the district in the 109th Congress and going back in the 112th Congress, and dealing with some pretty difficult issues right now in the nation's capital. Big difference between when I was there in 2005 and 2006, when the issues were mainly foreign policy related. Much different time. Unemployment was under 5%, I'd say 4.5%, maybe a little less than that. And the annual budget deficits were coming down, heading toward a balanced budget. Come home for 4 years, represent some small businesses, take care of some health issues, and go back to the United States Congress then 4 years later. And all of a sudden, there aren't a lot of individuals either back home in Bucks County or folks focused on the nation's capital on the foreign policy issues. They're all the economic issues. Unemployment is more than doubled. It's now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 8.3%. But the real unemployment numbers much higher. I think you know that as well as anybody. And the annual budget deficits have gone through the roof. It went from about $250 billion in 2005, 2006 to when I arrived in Washington in January of 2011, about $1.5 trillion. So I want to put that in perspective for you a little bit, and but you can see how the issues have become much more related to debt deficit, spending, taxes, the budget, and how to get people back to work. So that's what Washington has been appropriately, I think, focused on in the conversation that's going on down there. And it's everything that I'm talking about when I get back down, or get back home, how to get people back to work. So that's the principal issue in this race for the United States Congress. No matter what, but what you're seeing on the commercials or reading about. I think we've got a news reporter. Are you Tamari?
Yes, sir.
For the Philadelphia Inquirer?
Yes.
Stand up and introduce yourself here. Good. He's one of the guys covering the race here. So very good. So this race is about jobs and the economy. I can tell you jobs, right?
Yes, sir.
John, you knock on 100 doors in Quakertown Borough or in Percy Borough. 95 of the individuals would tell you, if you ask them what's the big issue in the race for the United States Congress or any of the races, could be State House, any of the races, I have a family member who lost a job. My business is struggling. I'm worried about keeping my job. It's all about jobs and getting people to work. And so one of the things that I decided to do back in, I was going to say around May, when the president, our president was commenting on the condition of the economy and somewhat famously said, in his view, he said the private sector is doing fine. You probably remember the comment. My thought was, I've spent a lot of time in the private sector and in my practice represented a lot of small businesses. And I recognized and knew from the time that I was representing small businesses, hard work, they pass budgets, they live by the budgets, they have to. They need to keep their customers happy. They need to make certain that their obligations are obligations they're living up to and that they can meet their payroll each and every week or every other week as they make that payroll. So I thought if you want to find out how the private sector is doing, go out and ask the private sector because they'll tell you. That's a wonderful thing. So I said around that time, around May, heading back to my district in Bucks County, and I'm going to go out to the private sector. I'm going to visit 100 businesses in Bucks County in 100 days. And my staff looked at me like, you're not really going to do that? I said, yeah, we're really going to do that. And so we started in May, and we visited small businesses, and we visited medium-sized businesses. We visited manufacturers, production operations, service organizations, health care organizations, anybody that would meet with us. And they were great, great meetings. And we heard quite a bit. We heard a lot of consistent messages from those businesses, and I heard some interesting sort of almost idiosyncratic stuff, with individuals. So, certain businesses had a consistent message, and then other businesses had these issues that were kind of specific to them. And as we got toward the end of the summer, I was getting close to the 100th business. I ultimately visited the 100th business in August. It was down in New Britain Township, and it was Buyer's Choice. Manufacturing facility. They employ about 100 people. We got to about number 94, 95, and 96, and my staff was starting to, sort of relax a little bit, thinking, all right, Fitzpatrick's almost finished his 100 businesses. And I said to Joe Hogan, who works for me, I said, when we get to 100, I'm just telling you right now, we're going to 150, because this is probably one of the most sort of meaningful, productive things I've done as a member of Congress, is to sit down and talk with, not just talk with the business owners, but talk with everybody inside the business, the bookkeeper, the parts guy, the person who's maintaining or building back in the production side of the operation. And I want to tell you what I heard. And there's a reason I'm telling you this story. So I talked to all these businesses, and they basically said, you want to know what's wrong with the economy? You want to know why we're not growing, why we're not expanding, why we're not investing, sort of creating jobs? Taxes are too high and your tax code is too complicated. And this is sort of in Bucks County wisdom, from operating a business. So federal taxes are too high, the tax code is too complicated. You pass a lot of regulations. We don't think you really understand the impact of those regulations on the economy or our ability to grow and create jobs. And healthcare costs are out of control. You want to help small business? You say you care about the private sector? Deal with those issues in Washington. And no matter what business I went to, it seemed like they kept coming back to those same issues. Now, there were different businesses that they might have had a third, fourth issue or a fifth issue, but it was always basically those first three. I'll give you an example. I was, one particular business, his stands in the middle of Doylestown. You guys probably have heard of them. They sell some sort of farm equipment and lawn equipment. And it's a company that's been in the same place for many. It's a family-owned business, several generations in the same family, same location. So they've survived a lot of sort of good days and tough days in the American economy. Survived it all. And I talked to everybody in his stands, including the guy that services the equipment that they sell. They sell it under warranty. Their fourth issue, after they talked about the first three, they said, this is the problem we're having. You've got ethanol in the gasoline. And we know there's probably some federal policy was very well intentioned, but you know how it affects us? We sell leaf blowers and weed whackers and all this small engine equipment. We're responsible for maintaining it under the warranty. And it's coming in, the ethanol is killing the engines. So it's a typical, federal government saw a problem. They wanted to clean the air, and they first, put MTB in the gasoline, and that started leaking into the groundwater, polluting wells, which is why most gas stations around Bucks County kind of closed down. So they went to ethanol, and the ethanol, is really hurting the engine. So, each of these businesses had a fourth issue or a fifth issue. But as I was walking to the door with Mr. and Mrs. Histan, after that, I talked to everybody on the shop floor and spent a couple of hours with them. It basically said, Mike, if you want to help the private economy, it said lower taxes and get out of the way. Lower taxes and get out of the way. So there you have it. This race for the United States Congress, the race, I think, for the presidency that we're watching unfold right before us over the course of the next 6 weeks, 6 weeks from yesterday. This race will be over. Really and ultimately is about what party do you believe, what philosophy do you think will lead us to economic recovery?